In this video, let's take a look back at slope-intercept form. What does it mean? How do I use it? And what's an example of it? So to put it simply, slope-intercept form is just the written form of a linear equation. It's expressed as y equals mx plus b. Y, m, x, and b are all variables. They represent a number. But in this case, the m is the slope, and the b is the y-intercept. The slope-intercept form. Let's look at an example to really better understand slope and y-intercept. Let's say you're given this slope-intercept equation, this linear equation, y equals 3x minus 1. You could start by creating a table, plotting the points, and creating the graph. So let's do that. Your first x value that you want to start with is always 0. That has to do with the y-intercept, which I'll talk about momentarily. To figure out what my y value is, I take my equation, y equals 3x minus 1, and I insert 0 in for x. So I do 3 times my x, which is 0 in this case, minus 1. 3 times 0 is 0, minus 1 is negative 1. Same thing, take my equation. I insert my x, which is 1, 3 times 1, minus 1. 3 times 1 is 3, minus 1 is 2. Down the line, we do the same thing. 3 times 2 is 6, minus 1 is 5. And then 3 times 3 is 9, minus 1 is 8. So I've taken my slope-intercept form equation. I've used x inputs, x values, and have solved for their output, or y value. Now I can take each point and I can plot them on my coordinate plane. Starting at the origin, my first point is 0, comma, negative 1. So I'm going over 0, down 1, right there. And I'm going to go over 1 and up 2, over 1, up 2. Then I'm going to go over 2, up 5, over 2, up 5. And then I would go over 3 and up 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All the way up here. Now I have my graph, or I have my pairs graphed on my coordinate plane, and all I need to do is connect them to form my line. So you can see it goes just like this in all directions. So let's pause before I talk about slope and y-intercept. What you see here is 3 forms of the same thing. This line is represented on this coordinate plane. Y equals 3x minus 1 is this line. This is saying the same thing in slope-intercept form. You could also express this line through a table with coordinate pairs. These are all saying the same thing. Now, the slope of my line, we could look at the equation and see that it's 3. But what does slope really mean? If you imagine that a person is walking up this hill, trying to make their way up, the slope is a measurement of the steepness of this line. Another way to look at it is if you were to take 2 points on your line, let's say I choose 0, negative 1, and I choose 2, 5. I could create a right triangle where I know my side lengths would be 1, 2, and it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. To find the slope of that line, I can do my change in y over my change in x, how much my y changes relative to x. So in this case, change in y over my change in x would be 6 divided by 2, which is 3, our slope. You could also look at your table and see that each time I increase my x value by 1, my y value increases by 3. So that ratio is 3/1, or 3. So slope, again, it just measures the steepness of our line, how much the y value changes in response to the x value. You could find it by creating a triangle with your sides, y over x, or you could look at the change in y and the change in x, the ratio of that. The y-intercept is where our line crosses the y-axis. So our y-axis is here, it's our vertical axis, up and down. If I'm following my line, I see that it crosses my y-axis right here. So when x is -1, my line crosses the y-axis. You could also look at your table, and wherever your x value is 0, that's going to give you your y-intercept. So again, in short, our slope-intercept form equation, slope is always the number in front of our x. It measures how steep that line is, the change in y in response to x, how often it changes over x. And then our y-intercept is where our line crosses the y-axis, and you can find that by just looking for the 0 in your table, or where it crosses on the graph. Now, your challenge is, if you are given this equation here, y equals something x plus something, if I'm asking you to find the slope and the y-intercept, and all you have is this graph here and this table. You have this graph and this table. What's the slope of this line? What's the y-intercept? And then how would you write the equation as y equals mx plus b?